What's going on, everybody? Welcome to our Tottenham episode of 3 players every team should keep and 3 players every team should sell. So really, there are no real rules for this, though. In terms of players that they should keep on that category, I'm going to try and keep it to a point where it's, they've been linked with either moving out or bigger clubs or whatever it may be. Try and find players that have been linked with their way out. If you look at Tottenham and say something like Tottenham should keep Bergwijn, I mean, Bergwijn's been around for 6 months and there's no way he's going, so he's got no interest in him. Well, he's probably got interest, but no one who's audacious enough to really make a bid, so he's not really going to be on the list. So it's not going to be, just 3 names out of a hat kind of thing. So we're going to go about it the other way. So let's jump into this. We're going to start with 3 players Tottenham should go ahead and keep. 3 players they really ought to need to keep around, or I think they should at most keep around. Number 1, Harry Kane. It has to be said, but he gets linked with player or teams all the time. Real Madrid, Manchester United especially. I don't think Manchester United are a genuine target. They may admire him, but I don't think they look around at their squad and think Harry Kane's that high up the list. But Harry Kane obviously is their goal scorer. He didn't really have a great restart, though he came off a really long layoff after his injury and the virus. Whether he wants to leave, there have been rumblings that he may want to leave. We all know how teams get, how locker rooms get when it comes to Mourinho. So we may be in for a little bit of a saga next year if this Tottenham team doesn't improve. Perhaps with a lot of the teams or a lot of the players I'm going to put on this list for Tottenham, there may be some issues this coming season depending on how things go. But Harry Kane, of course, one of the players they shouldn't leave. Their top goal scorer. I don't personally think he's, I don't know how to say this, a player you can really be tough to build a team around, mainly because he doesn't do too much more than scoring goals, which is obviously a huge part, but he doesn't connect with the team as well as some other strikers around the continent tend to do. So he's a bit of an odd player for me, but not someone Tottenham should be looking to move on. Number 2, Lucas. This is one I see a lot of people who kind of want him to move on, or fans that may be okay with him moving on, or sometimes he gets linked with a club here and there because he wants to play more. He doesn't seem like that kind of player. I feel like if he were that kind of player that wanted to move on because he wanted to be starting week in and week out, he still starts plenty of games. He would have left after the Champions League final, after he scored 3 in the semifinal, the hat trick that brought him through, and then didn't start the final. I feel like if anything like that were serious, that would have happened already. But Lucas, while he may not be the most consistent, has raw pace, a bit of ability, and he seems comfortable enough in the role he's in. I don't think that's a player you want to move on. I think that's the perfect player you really want to have around, someone who's there for the team, someone who's not there solely for himself. That is the perfect player to me. His linkings out, they make sense. He'd be a good option to have, but that's one of those players I think you should 100% keep around. And number 3 being Heung-min Son. He is Tottenham's best player, and he's on this list because, 1, he's been linked all over the place. He's a really good player, obviously. And then number 2, when Mourinho came and Pochettino was sacked, there were a lot of rumblings that he wanted to leave. He didn't want to be a part of this anymore. Pochettino was someone he was very close to. He wanted out after he was sacked. Thought it was an unnecessary sacking, one of those. So there were, for a long time there, it looked like he wanted to leave, may have wanted to leave. He's just someone who enjoys playing football to me, someone who is obviously incredible, but those players who are incredible, who just love to play, Heung-min Son, Suarez was like that, Luis Suarez, of course, players like that who love to play and who are really good are just invaluable to have around. And if I were Mourinho, I'd be building most of the squad around Son. I'd be building the team to help Son's strengths and things like that. He'd be the player I'd be building around in that team. I think he's the best player on the team, and a loss like that would obviously be huge. Next, we're going to jump right on into 3 players who need to be sold in my eyes. So we're going to start with Eric Lamela. He's a pretty decent player to have around Lamela. I think, though, Lamela, who continues to get older, whose place in the squad, the starting lineup, doesn't come around as much as I feel. I don't know how I want to say it. How you would think someone at 31 on a team like this would be playing week in and week out. I think you can get younger here. I think for someone who's pretty decent as a backup on the wing, in the middle, his physical attributes are kind of declining a little bit. You see it a lot when Tottenham are on the counterattack and he tends to hold the ball up a little bit longer. One, it's a style of play, but 2, it's just the pace isn't really there anymore for him to kind of break away and things like that. I think this is a position Tottenham can get younger in, quicker in, better in, all for the same kind of price, I would feel, if you move Lamela out. Also, there are just plenty of players in this position who can play in these couple of positions, I would say, for Lamela to kind of be sitting around in that sense. So Lamela's number 1 on someone I would personally move on. Number 2, Ndombele. Now, a couple of people might be surprised to see him on the list. A couple may not, considering the way the year's gone. He started out pretty well in Ndombele. Then Pochettino kind of backed off of him. Once Mourinho came, Mourinho was very vocal about him not playing, not being good enough, not putting in the work ethic. I don't think this gets better for Ndombele. He would have to stick out all of Mourinho's term, I think, to really have a fair shot. I think it's just tough. I just think it's a really tough situation. Ndombele, I imagine, wants to leave it. Mourinho probably wouldn't be overly concerned if they moved him on. Now would be the time to move him on. If you keep him on another couple of years and this doesn't work out, you are going to take a massive, massive loss. I imagine he's on pretty good wages. This just seems like one of those things where you cut the losses while you can, get a little bit of money for the player back, or as much money as you can back, and just start again. That's probably just the best option, and in this case, I think it's the best option. It's just a player and a manager who don't seem to be getting along, a player who didn't get the time he wanted under the last manager either. He gets plenty of criticism. It's probably just time to cut your losses, even though it's only been a year and you really want to hold on to it. It seems like relationships between Ndombele and other people in the club, the manager especially, just seem broken. And then number 3, finally, this would definitely catch a couple people off guard, perhaps. Dele Alli. This is someone who obviously has plenty of talent, but it's another player like Ndombele who, under Pochettino, wasn't playing exactly every single week starting, has attitude issues, of course, should really bring in good money for anyone who would like to buy him. The problem with Dele Alli is that his interest has cooled, I imagine, quite a bit recently because of that attitude, because of how contract talks have gone and went. There was a moment there when Mourinho first showed up where it looked like Dele Alli was going to burst back into life. Maybe he just didn't like Pochettino as much, and maybe he was just getting bored of the football or whatever it may have been. And there was 2 or 3 games there where Dele Alli looked really good, and he was ready to go. But then it fell off again, and he wasn't really playing a ton toward the end of the season. He does have himself his fair share of injury problems. I just think you can get a really good chunk of money for someone like Dele Alli, and then, you know, spend it in a different manner, maybe the same position, whatever you want to do with that money, obviously. But you could fetch a really good price for someone like Dele Alli. He is that good. But the injury problems and the attitude seem to be holding him back quite a bit. And at some point, that'll really start to catch up, I think, with Tottenham. with Mourinho, with Dele Alli himself. I just think that's something you can really, really capitalize on right now. And I just don't see a world where Dele Alli gets back to his best under a Mourinho-type team in a not so creative role, probably a little bit more defensive considering Mourinho likes to play that sit-back kind of style. You kind of hold Dele Alli back a little bit in that case. I just don't think this current Tottenham is set up for Dele Alli to really hit his potential and really succeed. So I think that's a player you could cash in on. There's plenty of money there. I personally think Tottenham need a bit of a rebuild. The whole defense needs a rebuild to me. Pretty much every position there. Goalkeeper is going to get to a point. I mean, Lloris is turned into one of those goalkeepers where you're kind of expecting a mistake every once in a while now. And he's also getting older. Maybe you revamp there, revamp in midfield. I think this team needs quite the revamp. And if you're just going to move some players on, players who you may not look at as incredibly important pieces, especially the way this year planned out or played out, I don't know. I think you take the money where you can and move on, guys. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments down below. Just let me know who you'd move on, if I'm crazy, whatever you want, guys. But that is going to be the end of the video. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more. And peace.